Good evening, everyone. We're going to wait maybe one more minute and then we'll get started. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know it's a really nice evening out. Don't want to keep you all here. So I'm Eunice Kim. I'm the Long Range Planning Manager for the City of Salem. Welcome to our fourth in a series of weekly meetings on our Salem. Tonight we are talking about transportation, and this is our second policy workshop related to transportation that we've had today. Our earlier one was at noon. Just a quick few reminders of things. We are going to be doing some interactive polling today, so there'll be opportunities for input. But if there's any way you can keep your camera and microphone off until we get to an opportunity for questions, that'd be great. And for anyone watching at home, we'll also explain how you can participate in the interactive portion of this meeting. And for those of you that are on the Zoom link, if you put anything in the chat, I just want to give you a reminder that we are going to be recording the chat and making that available to the public on the project website. So there's a few people here with me tonight that I just wanted to let them introduce themselves. Austin, Julie, Anthony, and Ted, if you want to introduce yourselves.
Thanks. I'm Austin Ross, Long Range Planner with the City of Salem.
Hi, I'm Julie Warnicki. I'm the Transportation Planning Manager with the City of Salem Public Works Department.
Hi, my name is Anthony Gumalo. I'm a Senior Transportation Planner with the City of Salem Public Works Department.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ted Stonecliffe. I'm a transit planner at Chariots.
Great, thanks. So tonight we're going to start with just a really quick overview of what the Our Salem project is and where we are in the process. And then we're going to dive into really three different sections of the meeting. The first part is going to really be focused on different ideas that we've already drafted in terms of policies throughout the kind of visioning portion of this process. And then the second half or second third is going to be focused on new policy ideas that we've done research from other communities and what policies they have related to transportation in their comprehensive plans. The third section is really open for your ideas, any questions or comments you have, and then we'll wrap up with a little bit of reminder of other parts of the project that are happening. If you're on the Zoom link, feel free to drop any questions or comments in the chat and we will address them as we go. So just as a reminder, this Our Salem project is a multi-year project to update what's known as our comprehensive plan. That's the long-range planning document that has goals, policies, and a map that really guide how we grow and develop over the next 10, 20, 30 years. It influences everything from how people travel around the community, to where different types of housing and businesses are allowed, to our impacts on the environment. So it's really the big picture framework that manages and guides our growth in the future. So this is a map hopefully many of you have seen before. The black dashed line on this map is the city limits, and then the gray area is Salem's portion of the urban growth boundary. That is the area that we're planning for. That's the area that we're expected to see 60,000 more people by 2035. And so while we're focused in terms of zoning, perhaps on the city limits, this really is supposed to guide our growth and development in the whole portion of the urban growth boundary. So where are we? We have wrapped up the visioning phase of this project, which was about the last year and a half, 2 years of community outreach, where we've talked to people about what their priorities were related to housing, economic development, transportation, natural resources, and put together some high-level goals that we put in the document, as well as a proposed comprehensive plan map. We took that to the City Council in March and asked them to accept that vision. It was not a formal adoption process. We were just asking to make sure, are we headed in the right direction? Is this the general framework that makes sense for Salem and City Council did accept that vision. And so now we're diving into all the details. The details include the zoning map, zoning code, and the policies. And so tonight we're really going to focus on the policies and use your input to help us revise policies and add policies that will support the overall vision that we've brought to the council. So again, just a reminder that we're having these weekly meetings every Wednesday at noon and at 5:30. You're welcome to come to either. The same material is going to be at each meeting. We've already talked about community engagement and equity, housing, economic development, and today's transportation. But if you're interested in parks or the environment or public community facilities, please come to our future Wednesday meetings. We hope to wrap these up by the end of May and use all of that input to really, again, update and add to our policies. So as I mentioned earlier, the meeting's really kind of divided into 3 different sections, and different folks will be talking to each of those sections. But for each section, we're going to present ideas to you, and then we're going to ask for your input. We're kind of doing something new. Some of you have been to these meetings before, so maybe you're familiar, hopefully, with the polling, but you can participate by using your website or by texting, and we'll go through that. And then again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat. So we're going to do some practice. I don't know if we have anyone new or if everyone's been here before, or if you're watching on YouTube, there are 2 ways to participate. One is to put the link polev/EuniceKim347 in your web browser, and I'll put that link in the chat right now. And then you can also text us. So instead of texting to like a phone number or a contact in your phone, you can text to 22333. And in the body of the text, write Eunice Kim, it's EUNICEKIM 347. And when you send that text message, you should get a response that says, you've now entered Eunice Kim's session. So we're going to try it out. And you'll notice that the questions will, if you're using a web browser, will automatically refresh. So you don't have to worry about trying to kind of keep up on the questions themselves. It will happen for you. So this is our first question. I'm ready to do live polling on the policies. Yes or no? If you're ready, type in A on your phone if you're texting, or click A on the web browser. And Austin, what do you think the magic number is? That's not staff.
I think we're looking for about 8 participants.
Okay. And there could be people voting who are watching again on YouTube. So if that number is a little different, we're not going to worry too much about it. Oh, someone's not ready. Is there a question or a complication that's happening with the polling? Oh, okay. Maybe not. All right, well, if you ever encounter any problems while you're doing this, just let us know by dropping a question in the chat. I think we'll move forward. So this is the vision statement that we brought to the council as part of that vision document in March, and it really captures kind of the high-level priorities that are shared in the community that we've heard throughout our visioning process. It's really a statement of what Salem wants to be in the future. And we just wanted to highlight here that safe mobility choices was something that we've heard pretty loud and clear and pretty consistently throughout our outreach. And so it is right there in our vision statement. Our goals and our policies will help support that, and that's what we're here to do tonight. There's a lot of work going on outside of this project, but related to this project. For example, the Salem Climate Action Plan is in progress right now. That's being led by the Public Works Department. And a lot of the strategies that they're working on right now have to do with reducing greenhouse gas emissions from transportation. So there's going to be overlap between the Our Salem project and the Climate Action Plan. So we're closely collaborating with them as we do this work. City Council did set a goal of carbon neutral by 2050. And so I anticipate there being a lot of policies and strategies related to transportation, as it is one of the major drivers of our emissions in the Salem area. The Salem Transportation System Plan is actually a component of the comprehensive plan. When we're working on the Our Salem project and when we're working on policies tonight, those policies will be forwarded to the Transportation System Plan project that hopefully will follow the adoption of our Salem. And so the idea is that we will set the high-level goals, and you'll see those in the vision document. But all the detailed policies and the project lists, that work will happen and will continue to happen when the Transportation System Plan is updated after the Our Salem project. We know that transportation is a huge priority in the community, and so we're continuing to get input, and we will again forward that on. But the work will continue after the Our Salem project. So these are just a few of the many transportation goals that are in the Our Salem vision. And so, as you can see from this kind of list, they're very high level. They talk about, a multimodal transportation network, addressing speeds and traffic calming, for example, in neighborhoods, and even moving freight. But the goal of tonight is to really dive into the details of how are we going to actually implement those? What do the policies look like that will drive the implementation? So I'm going to now hand it over to Austin, who's going to go over those draft policies that we previously drafted as part of the visioning process. Austin?
Thanks, Eunice. So like Eunice said, we're going to start with some previously drafted policy ideas. These come from an earlier phase of the project. While we were doing outreach, we got a lot of really good feedback and ideas about potential policies, and we wanted to make sure that we got those down somewhere before we moved on. And so these policy ideas come from that earlier engagement. You'll notice they were presented in the vision document that council approved or accepted. And so we've summarized those from that vision document. And so it's important to remember that tonight we're testing the ideas. We're not testing the wording. So if you have some ideas about the proper wording of something, you're welcome to tell us about that later. Tonight, we're worried about, do you like these ideas? Are they right for Salem? It's also important to remember that this is a small sample of the total number of policy ideas that we have. That full list is available on our website, and we definitely encourage you to go check those out. But these are some of the policy ideas that we wanted to test with the public here. So if you have questions as we're going along, please drop them in the chat and we'll definitely have time to answer them. And one note about wording in these policies. In the past, people have asked us, what exactly does this mean when we see the word encourage or promote versus require? So policy ideas that use language like promote or encourage refer to incentives rather than mandates. And when you see something like require, that's more of a mandate sort of an idea. So just worth keeping that in mind. So we'll jump to the first set of policy ideas. And these all have to do with multimodal transportation. So the first one about destinations is really about connecting different destinations within Salem via that multimodal transportation network. So whether it's shopping or schools and parks, employment, it's about making those connections and allowing people to get from place to place in that way. The pedestrian and bicycle network policy is about expanding those pedestrian and bike facilities and making sure that they accommodate people of all ages and abilities to make sure that it's equitable and serving all our residents. The street design policy is more about prioritization. So in prioritizing bike and pedestrian facilities improvements before adding additional lanes for motor vehicle traffic. And then the policy about transit centers is supporting the development of additional transit stations and potentially more transit centers outside of downtown. And I know that we have folks from Chariots here tonight, so they can speak to that maybe a little bit later or maybe now. But let's jump over to the live polling. So we're asking you to vote for any of them, all of them that you like. You can vote multiple times for one of them, for all of them, as many as you think apply. And I'm going to jump back over to the language so that you can see those.
Austin? Yeah, this is Steve. Can we have Cherish just talk about what the transit centers look like? I mean, we have park and ride, but kind of what are they thinking?
Yeah, definitely. Ted, do you
Happy to do that.
Just kind
Thanks
of
for
want to
the
know what
question.
you're thinking so we can answer that question positively.
Sure. So right now we have a project as an example of what we're thinking. Uh, the project is to look at a new transit center for South Salem. And so it wouldn't be just a transit center for buses, but it would be more of a mobility hub where we're connecting with bicycles and potentially scooters, if that's a technology that the city supports. Uber and Lyft would have access to pick up and drop off passengers from getting on and off the bus. So really more of a hub of transportation than just an activity center for buses.
Thank you, Ted. That helps clarify it. Appreciate it.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Ted. And it looks like Eunice dropped a link into the chat for folks who would like more information about that effort. So jumping back over to the poll, looks like people have had a good chance to vote. If anybody's having trouble, let us know in the chat. And if you just joined us, Eunice also dropped a link in the chat so that you can join either via your computer's web browser, your phone's web browser, or via text. And you can see some instructions at the top of the screen as well. So we'll move on to the second group of policy ideas. These are about safety and accessibility. So that first one, entitled accessibility, is about improving sidewalks and making sure that we're providing access for everybody. So people with mobility devices, all other users. So whether that's improving curb cuts at intersections or making other improvements that facilitate the use for everyone and making sure that our system is equitable. The policy about equity is about improving options for all ages and incomes. So prioritizing underserved areas of the urban area, Salem urban area, to make sure that we're distributing services, transportation options equitably. The traffic calming one is about making sure that our residential neighborhoods have reasonable speeds for traffic. So whether that means a road diet, something like narrower streets and speed humps, it would be about slowing down traffic in our neighborhoods. And then the resiliency policy is about making sure that our transportation infrastructure is resilient to natural hazards, whether that's earthquakes or some other form of natural hazard. We want to make sure, or this policy would instruct us to make sure that our system is resilient. So we'll jump to the poll now. And it looks like we have a question that says, would votes for A and B prioritize sidewalks being available at all in neighborhoods? So I think, yes, it would include neighborhoods for sure. Making sure that we're connecting neighborhoods with destinations similar to the policy we saw in the last set, and filling in gaps where we can, but doing so equitably, and considering what areas either have been underserved historically or are currently underserved. So yeah, this person is noting that many neighborhood streets in Sunny Slope don't have sidewalk improvements existing. So that is something that, yeah, these policies would get at, that sort of thing. Good clarification. So it looks like we've got our votes here. Thanks for that, everyone. We're gonna keep on moving. The next set is about efficiency and performance as well as livability. So the street connectivity policy is about making sure that there are street connections that help reduce the length of trips, improve walking and biking options. So that's the intent there, is to make sure there's more than one way to get from here to there, making sure that our streets are well connected and providing people with options. The next one about congestion is about managing and improving the transportation system to make sure that our system works efficiently. It does mention including across the Willamette River there, and that connection is in our transportation system plan right now, though council decided not to pursue the Willamette River crossing several years ago. So the next one is about placemaking and really making sure our streetscapes are cohesive with the feel of our neighborhoods. So whether that's through plantings or art or some other type of improvements in the streetscape design that reflect the character of the neighborhoods that they're in. And then the one about impacts is making sure that the benefits and the burdens of our transportation investments and system are distributed equitably. So making sure that not just one group is benefiting or a certain group isn't disproportionately impacted by any decisions or investments. So we'll jump over to the poll again. Go ahead and vote, and I'll keep those, the wording up there. We have a question that says, how do I vote for congestion control without endorsing another bridge? That's a good question. I think by putting it there in the chat, that's a good way to suggest that. And if you choose to vote support B, that doesn't necessarily mean you're voting for another bridge. It just means that you support an efficient transportation system. And I do see that it's important to make a distinction there, so thank you. Somebody's saying placemaking sounds like another requirement for developers to adhere to. What does that mean? So if we're talking about streetscape design, that would likely not put the onus on developers because the streetscape is the public right of way. So whether that were through some type of improvement district or otherwise, I don't think it would necessarily put the burden on developers, but it looks like Julie and Eunice might want to chime in too.
Yeah, I would think, thanks, Austin. I was just going to say that, you know, for the downtown, for example, there was a whole streetscape design project to really figure out what this sidewalk kind of public realm should look like, what the design should be to be very unique to downtown. So that could happen maybe in other corridors in other areas. For example, we did do a whole State Street corridor project that had a specific design for the street, but it could include how the private development or how the urban form on the private property interacts, right, with the street design. And we could do that through design standards, for example, that create more kind of pedestrian friendly development. Julie, go ahead.
I was basically going to say the same thing. I think, you know, exactly how it's implemented would be an implementation question. You know, it could be through a city initiated project like the downtown, or it could be that there would be standards in place for, you know, this certain area. You know, if you redevelop, then instead of just putting in a 5-foot sidewalk, you know, with a planting strip, that maybe you need to do something that's a little different to, you know, match the place making of that area.
Thanks, Julie. I think another good example would be maybe 2nd Street near Edgewater. They've had some recent streetscape improvements as well. Seeing another comment there about encouraging non-single occupancy vehicles for commuting rather than widening roads. I appreciate that suggestion, and I want to make sure everybody knows that we're using the suggestions that get dropped in that chat as well. So if you put it in there, we'll have it, we'll consider it. So thanks for sharing that.
And we also have a policy idea that we're testing. Policy ideas related to this, so you'll see those coming up.
So it looks like folks have recorded their votes. Thanks, we appreciate that. Let's jump to the last group here. This one's about parking as well as greenhouse gas emissions and the environment. So that flexibility policy is about lowering parking minimums, and that would likely not be everywhere, but in certain locations, and providing more flexibility about how parking requirements are met. So maybe we start allowing shared parking agreements, things like that, to make sure that we're meeting our parking needs, but not requiring too much. The sustainable design policy would be about encouraging sustainable design features in new or improved surface parking. So whether that's stormwater infrastructure or just additional landscaping to help reduce urban heat island effects or something like that. It's about encouraging that sustainable design. The single occupancy vehicle idea is about decreasing reliance on single occupancy vehicles and by making sure that other modes are viable and convenient. So whether that's transit or biking or walking or some other mode, making sure that we're making those reliable and viable. And then the last one is about system efficiency, and that's about using transportation demand management and making sure that we're using pedestrian facilities and bike facilities to relieve congestion before we widen roads. So using transit service upgrades, things like that, and pedestrian and bike facilities before we rely on wider roads to meet our transportation demand. So we had a little trouble with this polling question at the noontime meeting, but it looks like it's working now. I'm glad to see. So I'll leave these policies up here for people to look at while they vote. I see a comment about speaking to my neighborhood association about the idea of a parking benefit district, a neighborhood version of common downtown parking practice. Elliot, do you want to maybe tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Hi. I guess it's back from I mentioned this when I spoke to you guys a few weeks ago, the book, the high cost of free parking. So an idea that Donald Shoup kind of puts forward is that a way to reduce parking pressure on neighborhood areas is to allow, instead of just having a strict resident permit system, you could open it up to other people to park in the neighborhood with metered parking, but all the income from that, those meters would stay within the neighborhood or the block within the neighborhood. And I'm kind of curious what the other people think about that. I guess like maybe I'll just say quickly, an advantage of this system is that it's a lot easier to get people in the neighborhood on board with the idea. Otherwise, it's pretty uncommon to have meters in neighborhood parking areas because people get upset about it.
Awesome. I appreciate that idea. I'm not sure it's one we've heard yet during this project, but we'll definitely dig into it a little bit for you. Julie, do you have a comment?
Yeah, this came up a number of years ago with the Central Salem parking study, which is now quite a number of years ago. We had looked at possibly doing it in some of the residential permit parking areas that are close to downtown, where you could do, having the residential permit parking requirement helps to protect the parking for the people that live there. But, you could potentially have, 2 or 3 spaces on that street that could be sold to other people and then have the revenue go towards the neighborhood. So it's something that we have, looked into the past. We did not quite that robust, but we did a little bit of a system around South Salem High School a number of years ago where we sold permits to, or the schools sold permits to students, so maybe 2 per block. So yeah, something that we could definitely explore further. But as you said, people need to be sort of on board for that.
Thanks, Julie. I see another comment saying that D implies that widening roads is inevitable. Emphasis needs to be on alternatives to cars. Thanks for that input. I can't speak to whether this policy idea was intended to make that implication, but it certainly suggests that the priority is on bike and pedestrian facilities and transit upgrades. But we'll take that note. I appreciate it. Another one about exploring permeable surface materials for parking lots. I think that goes along with that sustainable design idea. That definitely makes sense. And someone is agreeing with Meg, talking about induced demand on the roadways. Eunice?
Yeah, so I just wanted to note that there's some work going on at the state level with the climate friendly and equitable communities rulemaking that DLCD is leading right now. And there could be rules coming down from the state that kind of restrict congestion and road widening for capacity as in terms of what a local government can do without considering other factors like safety and maybe mobility. So that work's kind of ongoing right now. We're tracking that. Julie's actually on the rulemaking advisory committee. So more on that when we know more.
Thanks. All right, let's see. Make sure everybody's had a chance to vote here. Looks like this one's maybe a little bit more mixed. That's fine. If anybody has any other questions and comments, this is a great time to share them. Drop them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them for you. Here's one that says, I wonder if any local studies have been done when those parking ideas were being investigated. Julie, do you know about that?
Sorry. I mean, we did a local parking study, which is what came up with the idea. And, I mean, we're talking, this was 15 years ago. So a lot of the people that were involved are probably not around anymore. And so we would probably need to sort of reinvigorate that. I think we had talked about going to grant a neighborhood association to do a pilot project there, but it sort of ran out of steam at that point.
So it sounds like more studies could be done. Does anybody else have any questions or comments about this section? All right, well, we'll have more time for discussion later. I love it. So I'm going to turn it over to Anthony, and he's going to take us through the new ideas.
Okay, thanks, Austin. So what we're going to go over now is we did a little bit of research looking at plans from other cities here in Oregon, as well as out of state, to see if there were any ideas that we could sort of glean off of more recently adopted plans that would add to the R Salem process. So go ahead, Austin, if you want to go to the next slide. So the first one is regarding the airport. Do we want to have language in the plan related to promoting a sustainable airport to meet the region's air transportation needs without compromising livability and quality of life? Right now, the airport is not providing commercial service, but that doesn't mean it won't be in the future. So Austin, if you want to go ahead and open up the polling. And I guess what we're looking for here is, do you agree or disagree with this being included in the plan? And we took this policy. I noted one in the Portland plan. So yeah, I mean, we're obviously talking different scale, different use.
So we have a question here about what is a sustainable airport?
I not necessarily electric planes, but I would say one that is considerate of the land uses around it, and possibly supports sustainable transportation to and from.
I think it could also refer to economic sustainability.
Yes.
Yeah, and I see that somebody put a comment in that they listened to the work session recently on the airport, and I do think that we need to make sure that we coordinate with what's going forward with, or whatever comes out of the airport master planning. I listened to part of that work session and I found it actually very, very interesting. You know, discussions of some of the electric plane technology that's being developed, and how that might fit in Salem. It's available on YouTube if anybody wants to watch it. It was just Monday night and it was about an hour and a half.
Okay. Active transportation routes. This is what it sounds like. Develop pedestrian bicycle friendly alternatives to arterials and collectors for multimodal travel. So we're not just talking about promoting active transportation, but having routes off of promoting them away from arterials and collector streets. So maybe think of them more along local roads or on their own layout. Yeah, this one, this was in the Hillsborough plan, which was recently adopted in 2018.
And if folks have any questions or they're unsure about what exactly this means, please ask for clarification and we'll do our best to give additional examples.
Yeah, so you know, an active transportation route would, you know, think about a multi-use trail where you can, you know, bike, walk, skateboard, scooter. Yeah, this is a popular one.
All right. Should we move on?
Yeah. Emerging performance measurements. This is also from that Hillsborough plan adopted in 2018. Think here about you know, emerging technologies and emerging methodologies for you know, measuring how the transportation system is performing. Would you like to see language related to that in the plan? Essentially considering, you know, looking for and considering new ways and new methods for assessing performance. seeing a question about, does this mean a microchip on every bicycle or what? Not necessarily.
So we also had a question asking, what about volume to capacity
see.
ratios? Would that be a good example?
Well, that's already something that that we try to measure in all our, in throughout the transportation network.
I mean, part of this is probably using, a lot of the, Bluetooth technology where you can, gather data from different sources as to how people are moving around the system. And we are, sort of exploring that, but we expect that there will be ways of doing that over time and trying to keep sort of on the edge of that technology so that we can, better understand how people are using the system, as we manage it.
All right, let's keep going.
Okay. Emerging user technologies. So, supporting the use of emerging technologies for the transportation system users to improve overall efficiency and safety. Think about the new technologies, new types of transportation, new apps that people are employing to get around more efficiently. I kind of think of this as sort of a catch-all to think about those evolving trends and technologies, and just keep us on the lookout to incorporate those into the plan. Also from Hillsborough. Now think about gig economy, ride-sharing services, personal transport vehicles, smart cars, smartphone apps, that sort of thing. I think that's everyone, Austin, right? Okay. Yeah, curbside management. As we move forward with new technologies and new ways to get around, as transit changes and improves the way they operate, maybe we see bus rapid transit in the future. What do we need to be considering for how we imagine the curbs, drop off and pickup areas, bike share parking areas, scooter parking areas, these sorts of things? Do you think there needs to be language or an item in the plan regarding these issues? Also, delivery systems. Think about earlier today. Julie brought up how she was recently in Arizona and saw robots delivering, Amazon items. So it's something to think about. Okay, I think that's everyone. Right, Austin? Electric vehicles. What needs to be done to support development of a network that will more greatly support electric vehicles? It's not just about electric cars. We're also talking about electric buses being incorporated into the Chariots fleet, better more availability for electric parking facilities, electric bicycles. What are there policies that we can incorporate to encourage use of electric vehicles? Something we've been discussing. Multifamily, do we need to plan multifamily developments and require to require electric vehicle parking and charging stations?
I'll just add a brief amount for the Chariot side. We are already in the process of acquiring 5 electric buses that will be deployed on the Lancaster Drive corridor probably next year. And we have an application for 5 more that we have submitted. That said, there are a lot of issues with electric buses that are being worked out in the industry at this point. And it's still premature to say when or if we would be converting our entire fleet to electricity, but certainly we are entering the electric bus technology, and having a policy of support from the city would definitely be appropriate in our opinion.
Okay. Thanks, Ted. Austin, do we have another one? Parking management. Think about the things we've been discussing. Changes to how people get around. Changes to how people get downtown. As ride sharing apps become more prevalent, as hopefully things like bike sharing and scooter sharing become more prevalent, do we need to change the way that we think about parking and parking management, especially in places like downtown? Do we need to establish and maintain prices for public parking that balance supply and demand? Do you think there should be something about that in the plan? So would this be a variable parking pricing regime that updates periodically? Potentially, I think that would, like one street would cost more than 1-2 blocks away. I couldn't say. I think that's kind of a planning issue. I don't know if Austin or Eunice want to speak to that, or Julie, do you have something?
I think that
I understand the question. Yeah.
I mean, that would be an implementation issue, but yes, I think that the policy would support having a system that can respond to different demands at different locations. So your, highest demand parking might be a little bit more expensive than your, another area. So you could try to maintain a good level of vacant parking and parking occupancy, but that gets down to your implementation details.
Okay. What can we do to make e-bikes an affordable option? I'm not sure. I think that e-bikes are, that's kind of like a private vendor issue. It may be similar to electric cars. Maybe there are credits or, preferred parking made available, but.
This could also be that there are incentives from private employers who subsidize or incentivize the use or somehow help folks. And there's a suggestion here about the city working with Ride Salem to buy e-bikes to share.
Right now, I'm not sure how many e-bikes. I don't think Ride Salem has e-bikes as of right now. They have a bike sharing program that they're looking to launch in June. Their relaunch in June. But right now, they don't have any e-bikes that I know of. Okay. Do you want to move on or? Okay. Thanks.
Thanks. Thanks, Anthony. So this is just kind of the portion of the meeting where we want to hear your ideas. Looks like you all have some good ideas. They've already been dropping in the chat. I should have mentioned earlier that, we did take a lot of ideas from other cities to see, again, do they make sense for Salem? But if we do get support for them broadly, we would then tailor them to Salem so they don't seem so Portland or Hillsborough or Colorado. Because obviously Salem has unique conditions that we need to work within. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. So we can move on. So we're doing a lot of outreach right now on policies with these weekly meetings, but also with a variety of meetings with different community groups. And so we will continue doing that over the next couple of months. We also have a survey online in English and in Spanish. So our idea is that we'll kind of collect all the information from all of our outreach to update and add to those policies and present them back to the community. The idea hopefully is that we'll adopt all the policies when we adopt the comprehensive plan package. But as I mentioned earlier, the policies related to transportation, though, would be forwarded to the Transportation System Plan Update Project, which would again be after our Salem. So it's a little bit different than our other policies related to housing, for example, that would be directly in the comprehensive plan. So this is just a snapshot of our project website, cityofsalem.net/oursalem. We're constantly adding information there. So if you want to check there for the latest information on how to give input and participate, that'd be great. This is just a picture of our policy survey that's, again, available in English and Spanish. In addition to policies, there's a lot of other work that we're doing. One is focused on zoning. And so as I mentioned earlier with the vision document, we really brought a very high-level map to the council for acceptance. And now what we're doing is putting together an interactive map at the zoning level. So if you think about commercial office, commercial retail, commercial general versus just commercial at the comprehensive plan map level, that's kind of the level that we'll be working on. We hope to launch that next week. So look for an announcement. We'll put that on our project website. And there'll be opportunities to kind of drop a pin and add a comment to let us know, do you agree or disagree? And then another thing we're doing is we have a zoning subcommittee that has its first meeting next week as well. That zoning subcommittee is made up of 4 planning commissioners and 4 city councilors, and they're focused on zoning code changes that could be made to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, particularly from transportation. So those meetings are also open to the public. There'll be opportunities for the public to comment and participate. So again, the first one is Friday, April 30th from 12 to 2 p.m. And all the information on how to participate and how to watch are on the project website. So this is just my information. You can also just email me, call me anytime. If there are other groups that you want us to come and talk to, we are more than happy to do that. Just let us know. It looks like there's a comment here. Is there plans to prioritize streets currently congested and not meeting mobility goals to be looked at first to reduce traffic congestion and wait time emissions? Julie?
Sorry. So are there plans to prioritize streets currently congested and not meeting mobility goals to be looked at first to reduce traffic congestion and wait time emissions. I would say that when we update the transportation system plan, we will be looking at our project list, and our project list, we will be prioritizing our needs, looking at a bunch of different factors. My guess is that congestion and wait time emissions issues will be one factor. I also think that bicycle and pedestrian safety will likely be another factor, as will equity in how things are distributed. So the goals, the framework that we are putting forth with our Salem and those goals will drive some more specific prioritization factors, or prioritization, what do you call them? Measures, how we're going to figure that out, because we definitely have a lot more needs than we have money. The other thing that Eunice alluded to is the climate friendly and equitable communities rulemaking, which is going on at the state level, which is going to be making changes or proposing changes to the transportation planning rule, which governs how cities do transportation planning. One of the things that they have stated that they're going to be doing is requiring that local transportation system plans be financially constrained, which means that rather than having a laundry list of absolutely everything in the world that is needed in our with our transportation system, we are going to be asked to sort of narrow that list, recognizing financial realities. And so I think that will be coming. Unfortunately, I can't give you the exact timing. Part of it does tie into those rules that are coming out, because those are supposed to come out about a year from now. I think they're aiming for March of 2022. So that will sort of help to inform how this thing rolls out.
Eunice, we also
Thanks,
had
Julie.
a question about how you can participate and provide input in discussions regarding transportation in Salem. This person was a transit operator. I see that Ted dropped some information in the chat, but Ted, do you want to maybe address that too?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to mention that the update to the transportation system plan that Julie is mentioning, she mentioned that that is about a year away, and Chariots will also be doing a long-range planning document that will help inform that transportation system plan, at least the transit component of that. But it's good timing because the two projects will really inform each other. The goals that are established by this Our Salem project, will be incorporated into the TSP, but the Chariots long range plan is in the same atmosphere and in the same taking those lessons, or what am I trying to say? Just the documents will be integrated to a certain extent and build off of each other. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thanks, Ted.
And I'm sure there will be lots of opportunities for input in both of those processes, the transportation systems plan update and the long-range transit planning efforts. So stay tuned for those and keep participating in the efforts we're doing with our Salem.
Yeah, is there any last minute other questions or comments? I am going to put in the chat. You can subscribe to our emails. We've been sending out a lot of updates about our meetings, opportunities to engage. We'll send an email about our interactive map when it's ready, the policy zoning subcommittee. So if you want to sign up and get those emails, you can just go on our project website too and look for that. We're always looking to spread the word, so please help us. Go ahead, Ted. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to address Mr. Davis's comment there. So We are currently in the RFP process, or the project solicitation process, for the consultant team who would be working on the long range plan with us. So we don't have anything at the current time, but probably by September, October, we'll be beginning our public outreach for that long range planning process.
So there's a ton going on. It's a great time to be engaged in planning efforts. And if you're not sure kind of how to plug in, you can always call me or email me. And if it's not me and a project that I'm working on, I can direct you to the right person. So I'm happy to do that. But if there's nothing else, I wanted to thank everyone for coming out tonight. We got it done a little early, so you have some time back to your evening. And just wanted to say thank you. I think next week is Parks and Recreation. Is that right, Austin? So if you're interested in that, we'll see you then. Thank you.